Kate Morrison opened her eyes slowly. Everything was cold. Her body felt heavy, like someone had placed rocks on her chest. The air tasted metallic and stale. She tried to remember where she was and why everything hurt so much. The cryopod. She was in the cryopod. The memories came back in pieces like broken glass cutting through her mind. The screaming. The alarms. The thing that came through the walls and consumed everything it touched. Her crew, all 47 of them. Gone. Kate pushed the pod door open and fell onto the cold metal floor. Her legs did not want to work properly. Cryosleep always did this. The body needed time to wake up completely. She lay there for a minute, breathing hard, trying to make her muscles remember how to move. The station was quiet. Too quiet. Delta Prime was a research station with over 200 rooms and hallways. It should have been filled with the sounds of machinery, computers, people working. Now there was nothing. Just the soft hum of emergency power and her own breathing. She pulled herself up using the pod's edge. Her reflection stared back at her from the pod's glass surface. She looked terrible. Her brown hair was tangled and stuck to her face with sweat. Her eyes were red and tired. She was still wearing her engineer uniform, now wrinkled and dirty. Kate checked her watch. It had been 6 days since she sealed herself in the vault. 6 days of cryosleep while the station died around her. She had hoped that help would come, that someone would respond to their distress signals. But the silence told her everything. No one was coming. She walked to the vault door and pressed her ear against it. No sounds. The Vorax might be gone. Or it might be waiting just outside. There was only one way to find out. Kate entered her code into the door panel and held her breath as it slowly opened. The hallway beyond was dark, except for the red emergency lights. The walls had changed. They were covered in something black and wet-looking. It moved slightly, like it was breathing. Kate felt her stomach turn. The Vorax had spread everywhere. She needed to get to the main control room. If any systems were still working, that was where she would find them. Kate grabbed an emergency kit from the vault and checked its contents. A flashlight, some basic tools, water packets, and a small plasma cutter. Not much, but it would have to be enough. The journey through the station was like walking through a nightmare. Every surface was covered in the black substance. In some places it was thick like mud. In others it formed strange shapes that looked almost like faces or hands reaching out. Kate kept her eyes forward and moved quickly. She passed the mess hall where her crew used to eat together. The tables and chairs were gone, dissolved into the black mass. She remembered laughing there with Alan Cooper just a week ago. He had been showing everyone pictures of his new daughter. Now he was gone, consumed by the thing that surrounded her. Kate forced herself to keep moving. Thinking about the dead would not help. She had to focus on surviving. That was what her father had taught her when she was young. Gregory Morrison had been a station mechanic who worked in the Belt colonies. He had died when she was 16, but his lessons stayed with her. When things go wrong in space, you do not panic. You think, you plan. You survive. The control room door was sealed shut. Kate used the plasma cutter to burn through the lock. It took 15 minutes and her arms were shaking by the time she finished. The door opened with a hiss of escaping air. Inside, the room was mostly clean. The Vorax had not reached this far yet. Kate sat down at the main console and started checking the systems. Most of them were offline. Life support was running on emergency power. Communications were damaged but not completely dead. She might be able to send a message. The question was whether anyone would listen. She pulled up the station logs and started reading. What she found made her blood run cold. The Galactic Council knew about the Vorax outbreak. They had received the distress signals, but instead of sending help, they had declared the entire sector a quarantine zone. No ships in or out, no rescue missions. They were going to let everyone die. But it was worse than that. According to the last transmission, the Council had voted to sterilize the sector. They were going to launch fusion bombs to destroy everything. The stations, the Vorax, any survivors. They called it containment. Kate called it murder. She checked the timestamp on the transmission. It was 5 days old. The bombs would launch in 72 hours from that time. Kate did the math quickly. She had less than 3 days left. Kate sat back in her chair and laughed. It was a bitter, tired sound. She had survived the Vorax. She had survived 6 days in cryosleep. And now she was going to be killed by the people who were supposed to protect her. The universe had a dark sense of humor. But Kate Morrison was not the type to give up easily. If she only had 3 days, she would use them. She started going through the station files, looking for anything that might help. Alan Cooper had been studying the Vorax before it killed him. Maybe he had found something useful. It took her 2 hours to find his research files. They were encrypted, but Kate knew Alan's codes. He had always used his daughter's birthday. She opened the files and started reading. Most of it was technical data about the Vorax's biology, how it consumed organic matter, how it evolved and adapted, how it spread. Then she found something interesting. Alan had discovered that the Vorax was sensitive to certain sound frequencies. High-pitched sounds caused it pain. Very specific frequencies could actually break down its cellular structure. He had been working on a way to weaponize this discovery when the outbreak happened. Kate felt a small spark of hope. If she could generate the right frequency, she might be able to kill the Vorax. She could save the station. She could prove to the Council that the sector did not need to be destroyed. She could survive, but there was a problem. The equipment needed to generate the frequency was in the main laboratory, 3 levels down. And between here and there, the station was completely infested with Vorax. Kate would have to go through the heart of the infection to reach it. She thought about her options. She could stay here in the control room and wait for the bombs, or she could try to reach the laboratory and fight for a chance to live. It was not really a choice at all. Kate stood up and gathered her supplies. She checked the plasma cutter's charge. It was at 60%. Not ideal, but it would have to do. She filled her water bottles from the emergency supply and packed some food bars. Then she did something that surprised herself. She activated the station's video recording system and started talking to the camera. "My name is Lieutenant Commander Kate Morrison. I am the last survivor of Research Station Delta Prime. If anyone finds this recording, you need to know what happened here. The Vorax is not just a bioweapon. It is intelligent. It learns, it adapts, but it can be stopped. Dr. Alan Cooper found a way. I am going to try to use his research to neutralize the organism. If I fail, at least you will know we tried." She paused and thought about what else to say. There were so many things. Messages for her family, for her friends, for the people who trained her and believed in her. But there was no time for all of that. Instead, she said something simple. To whoever is watching this, do not give up. Do not ever give up. Humans do not quit. We do not wait for rescue. We save ourselves. That is what makes us special. That is what makes us human. Kate turned off the recording and walked to the door. She took one last look at the control room, at the safety it offered. Then she stepped out into the infected hallway. The journey to the laboratory had begun. She had 70 hours left to save her life and prove to the galaxy that one human could make a difference. The black substance on the walls seemed to pulse as she walked past. Kate gripped the plasma cutter tightly and moved forward into the darkness. Whatever happened next, she would face it on her own terms. She came to this station as an engineer and a scientist. Now she would leave it as something more. A survivor. A fighter. A human who refused to die quietly. The stairwell down to the laboratory levels was the darkest place Kate had ever seen. Her flashlight cut through the blackness, but it felt like the darkness was pushing back. The Vorax covered every surface here. The walls dripped with it. The stairs were slippery and dangerous. Kate moved slowly, testing each step before putting her full weight on it. A fall here would be fatal, not just because of the height, but because the Vorax would sense her. It would know she was here. She had seen what it did to her crew. She did not want to die that way. Something moved in the corner of her vision. Kate froze and aimed her flashlight toward it. A section of the wall was pulsing, expanding and contracting like a lung breathing. She watched it for a full minute, barely breathing herself. The movement was rhythmic and steady. The Vorax was alive. Not just alive, but growing stronger. She reached the second-level landing and stopped to check her equipment. The plasma cutter was down to 55% charge. She had used more than she thought cutting through that door. Kate did some quick math in her head. If she had to cut through 2 more doors, she would run out of power before reaching the laboratory. There had to be another way. Kate pulled up the station map on her wrist computer. The screen flickered but worked. She studied the layout carefully. There was a maintenance tunnel that ran parallel to the main corridor. It would add time to her journey, but the doors there were older and might be easier to open manually. She found the entrance to the maintenance tunnel behind a storage panel. The panel was not locked, just stuck. Kate used a crowbar from her toolkit to pry it open. The tunnel beyond was narrow and low. She would have to crawl through it. Kate got down on her hands and knees and started crawling. The metal floor was cold against her palms. Her breathing sounded loud in the confined space. She tried not to think about the tons of station structure above her head, or the vorax that surrounded her on all sides. The tunnel went on for what felt like hours, but was probably only 20 minutes. Kate's knees and hands were sore when she finally reached the other end. She pushed open the exit panel and climbed out into a hallway she recognized. The medical bay was just ahead. The medical bay had been one of the first places the vorax attacked. Kate had watched on the security cameras as it consumed the doctors and patients in minutes. She had not wanted to come back here. But according to the station map, there was a power cell storage room attached to the bay. She could recharge her plasma cutter there. The bay doors were open. Inside, the vorax had transformed the room into something alien and horrible. What had been medical beds were now strange mounds of black tissue. The equipment was dissolved and absorbed into the walls. And in the center of the room, something large was growing. It looked like a cocoon or a nest. The structure was taller than Kate and pulsed with a faint light from within. She could hear sounds coming from it, wet organic sounds like something was forming inside. Kate felt her skin crawl. The vorax was not just spreading. It was building something she wanted to run. Every instinct told her to get away from that thing. But she needed the power cells. Kate forced herself to move along the wall, staying as far from the nest as possible. The storage room was on the other side of the bay. She was halfway across when the nest began to open. The black tissue split down the middle with a sound like tearing fabric. Something was emerging. Kate did not wait to see what it was. She ran for the storage room, her boots pounding on the metal floor. Behind her, she heard a screech that made her blood turn to ice. It was not a human sound or an animal sound. It was something entirely different. Something that should not exist. Kate reached the storage room and slammed the door behind her. She engaged the manual lock and leaned against the door, breathing hard. Something hit the door from the other side. Hard. The metal bent slightly under the impact. Kate jumped back. Another hit. Then another. Whatever was out there wanted in badly. She looked around the storage room desperately. There had to be another exit. The room was small and lined with shelves holding power cells, spare parts, and medical supplies. No other door. No windows. Just one ventilation shaft near the ceiling. Kate grabbed a chair and climbed up to examine it. The shaft was narrow, but she might fit if she left her pack behind. The door shuddered again. This time a crack appeared in the metal. Kate made her decision. She grabbed as many power cells as she could fit in her pockets, attached the plasma cutter to her belt, and pulled herself up into the ventilation shaft. The shaft was even tighter than the maintenance tunnel. Kate had to pull herself forward using her elbows. Her shoulders scraped against the metal sides. Behind her, she heard the storage room door finally break. The thing from the nest had gotten inside. Kate crawled faster, ignoring the pain in her arms and the scrapes on her skin. The shaft seemed to go on forever. Her flashlight showed only more metal tunnel ahead. She could hear something moving in the shaft behind her now. It was following her. Then she saw light ahead. Not her flashlight. Real light. The shaft opened into another room. Kate pulled herself forward with the last of her strength and fell out of the shaft onto a hard floor. She rolled over and looked up. She was in the station's main communications center. The room was filled with equipment and screens. Most importantly, it was clean. The vorax had not reached this area yet. Kate stood up and immediately went to the shaft opening. She needed to seal it before the creature followed her through. She found a metal panel and used her tools to bolt it over the shaft entrance. It would not hold forever, but it might buy her some time. Kate sat down at one of the communication stations and caught her breath. Her hands were shaking. Her heart was pounding so hard it hurt. She allowed herself 2 minutes to recover. Then she got to work. The communication system was damaged but functional. Kate started running diagnostics. If she could get a signal out, she might be able to contact the Galactic Council directly. She could tell them about Alan's research. She could convince them to delay the bombardment. It took 30 minutes to establish a connection. The signal was weak and filled with static, but it was working. Kate sent out a priority distress call on all council frequencies. She included her identity codes and a summary of what she had found. Then she waited. The response came faster than she expected. A voice crackled through the speakers. It spoke in Galactic Common, the language all Council species used. The voice was young and sounded nervous. "This is Junior Analyst Zixthor of the Galactic Council Monitoring Station. I received your transmission. I cannot believe someone is still alive on Delta Prime. The entire sector was supposed to be evacuated or dead by now." Kate leaned toward the microphone. "I am the only survivor, but I found research that shows the Vorax can be stopped. We do not need to destroy the sector. There is another way." There was a long pause. Then Zixthor spoke again and his voice was sad. "I am sorry, Commander Morrison. The decision has been made. The bombardment fleet is already in position. They launch in 68 hours. Nothing can stop it now. The Council has voted and the order is final." Kate felt anger surge through her. "So that is it? You are just going to kill me? Kill everyone who might still be alive on the other stations? Because it is easier than trying to fix the problem?" Zixthor hesitated. "It is not about easy or hard. It is about risk. The Vorax is too dangerous. If it spreads beyond this sector, billions could die. The Council cannot take that chance. I wish there was another way, but there is not." Kate closed her eyes and took a deep breath. When she spoke again, her voice was calm and determined. "Then I will find another way. I am going to reach the laboratory. I am going to use Dr. Cooper's research to destroy the Vorax. And I am going to prove to your Council that humans do not give up just because something is hard." She did not wait for a response. Kate ended the transmission and stood up. The laboratory was still 2 levels down. She had 68 hours left. It was time to keep moving. The creature from the nest might have given up on following her, or it might be waiting just outside this room. Either way, she could not stay here. Kate reloaded her plasma cutter with one of the new power cells. The charge read 100%. That was something at least. She checked her other supplies. Water, food bars, tools, and a first aid kit she had grabbed from the medical bay storage room. Not much, but she had survived with less. She walked to the door and listened carefully. No sounds from the other side. Kate opened it slowly and looked out into the corridor. Empty. The emergency lights cast everything in red shadows. She stepped out and let the door close behind her. The laboratory was waiting. And so was her chance to save herself and show the galaxy what one human could do when she refused to quit. The laboratory door was sealed with a biometric lock that required a handprint and eye scan. Kate placed her hand on the scanner and looked into the retinal reader. The system beeped once, then twice. For a terrible moment she thought it would reject her. Then the door hissed open. Inside, the laboratory was a mess. Equipment was overturned. Papers and data tablets were scattered across the floor. But the Vorax had not entered this room. The sterile white walls were clean. Kate felt a wave of relief so strong she almost sat down right there. She closed the door behind her and engaged the emergency seal. The laboratory had its own air supply and power source. She could stay here safely while she worked. Kate walked to the main workstation and powered it up. Alan's research files were still here, protected by multiple layers of security. Kate spent the next 4 hours reading through everything. Alan had been thorough. He had documented the Vorax's behavior, its growth patterns, its cellular structure. He had discovered that the organism was sensitive to sound waves between 18 and 22 kilohertz. At exactly 19.7 kilohertz, the Vorax cells began to break down. But there was a problem. The frequency had to be sustained and powerful. It could not just be a simple tone. Alan's notes indicated that the wave needed modulation, variation, something organic. He had run hundreds of simulations but never found the right pattern before the outbreak killed him. Kate rubbed her tired eyes and looked at the clock. She had been in the laboratory for 6 hours. That left 62 hours until the bombardment. She needed to solve this problem fast. What kind of organic modulation would work? What pattern would make the frequency effective? She stood up and walked around the laboratory, thinking. Her father had always said that the best solutions came when you stopped forcing them. Let your mind wander. Look at the problem from a different angle. Kate looked at the equipment around her. Spectrometers, microscopes, sound generators, computers. All the tools of science, then she saw it. A small recorder sitting on Alan's desk. He had used it to log his verbal notes while working. Kate picked it up and pressed play. Alan's voice filled the room, warm and familiar. He was talking about his daughter, about how she loved to hear him read bedtime stories, how his voice would rise and fall with the characters and plot. Kate stopped the recording. Voice. Human voice. It had natural modulation, rhythm, variation. Every person's voice was unique with its own pattern of frequencies. What if that was the missing piece? What if human speech was the organic modulation the frequency needed? She quickly set up an experiment. Kate recorded herself speaking a passage from an old book her father used to read to her. Then she fed the recording into the frequency generator and combined it with the 19.7 kilohertz tone. The computer analyzed the resulting wave pattern. It looked promising. Now she needed to test it. Kate found a sealed container with a small sample of Vorax tissue that Alan had collected. She placed it in a testing chamber and activated the modified frequency. For the first 30 seconds, nothing happened. Then the tissue began to change. It started to break apart, dissolving into a gray powder. Kate watched in amazement. It was working. The combination of the frequency and human voice was destroying the Vorax at the cellular level. She ran the test 3 more times with different voice recordings. Each time the result was the same. The Vorax died. She had found the solution. Now she needed to implement it on a larger scale. The laboratory had a sound broadcasting system designed for station-wide announcements. If Kate could modify it to transmit the frequency, she could clean the entire station. But the system needed more power than the laboratory could provide. She would have to restore the main reactor. The reactor control room was 3 corridors away from the laboratory. Kate gathered her equipment and prepared to make another dangerous journey through the infected station. She recorded a new message on the communication system first, updating Zixthor on what she had discovered. "This is Commander Morrison. I have found the solution. The Vorax can be destroyed using a specific sound frequency, modulated by human voice patterns. I'm going to implement this on Delta Prime. If I succeed, this method can be used to save the other stations in the sector. Tell your council to delay the bombardment. Give me a chance to prove this works." She sent the message and left the laboratory. The corridor outside was still clear, but Kate could hear sounds in the distance. Scraping, sliding, breathing sounds. The Vorax was active and spreading. She moved quickly but carefully, checking every corner before advancing. The reactor control room door was damaged but accessible. Kate used her plasma cutter to remove the bent metal blocking the entrance. Inside, the room was dark except for the dim glow of emergency indicators. The reactor had shut down automatically when the Vorax contaminated the cooling system. Kate sat down at the control console and began the restart sequence. It was a delicate process. If she made a mistake, the reactor could overload. But if she did nothing, she would not have enough power to broadcast the frequency. She worked slowly, checking each step twice before proceeding to the next. 2 hours later, the reactor hummed back to life. Power levels began climbing. Lights flickered on throughout the station. Kate allowed herself a small smile. One problem solved. Now for the bigger challenge. She returned to the laboratory and began modifying the broadcast system. The work was technical and required precision. Kate had to wire the frequency generator directly into the announcement speakers. She had to calibrate the power output to ensure the signal would reach every corner of the station, and she had to record a long enough voice sample to sustain the modulation. For the recording, Kate chose the same passage her father used to read. It was from an old Earth book about a man hunting a great white whale. The words were dramatic and powerful. Her father had loved the rhythm of the language. Kate spoke them clearly into the microphone, letting her voice rise and fall naturally with the text. "Call me Ishmael. Some years ago, never mind how long precisely, having little or no money in my purse and nothing particular to interest me on shore, I thought I would sail about a little and see the watery part of the world." She recorded for 10 minutes, enough to create a sustained pattern. Then Kate fed the recording into the system and combined it with the frequency. The computer showed green lights across the board. Everything was ready. Kate stood before the activation switch and took a deep breath. This was it. Either her solution would work and the station would be saved, or it would fail and she would die when the council's bombs fell. There was only one way to find out. She pressed the switch. The broadcast system activated with a low hum that quickly rose in pitch. Kate felt the sound in her bones. It was not painful, but it was powerful. She could hear her own voice echoing through the station's speakers, mixed with the high-frequency tone that human ears could barely detect. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then Kate heard it, a sound like rain on metal. She ran to the laboratory window and looked out into the corridor. The black substance covering the walls was dissolving. It was turning to gray powder and falling away in sheets. The Vorax was dying. Kate watched in awe as the infection retreated. Everywhere the sound reached, the Vorax broke down and dissolved. Within an hour, the corridors near the laboratory were clean. Within 3 hours, the entire level was clear. The broadcast continued, her voice reading the old words over and over, combined with the killing frequency. She checked the monitoring stations throughout the ship. Level by level, section by section, the Vorax was being eliminated. Even the nest in the medical bay was breaking apart. The creature that had emerged from it was gone, reduced to powder like the rest. 12 hours after she activated the broadcast, Delta Prime was clean. The Vorax was completely destroyed. Kate stood in the middle of the laboratory and felt tears running down her face. She had done it. She had saved the station. She had found a way to kill the thing that consumed her crew. But her work was not finished. Kate immediately contacted Zixthor and sent him all her data, recordings, and technical specifications. She explained exactly how the frequency worked and how it could be deployed on other stations. Then she asked him the question that mattered most. Will the Council delay the bombardment now? Will they give me a chance to save the other stations? Zixthor's response came an hour later. His voice was heavy with regret. I have presented your findings to the High Arbiter. He acknowledges that you succeeded on Delta Prime, but the Council will not delay the bombardment. They cannot take the risk that the Vorax has already spread beyond the stations. The order stands. You have 48 hours remaining. Kate felt her hope drain away. She had proven the solution worked. She had done everything right. And it still was not enough. The Council would rather destroy everything than trust one human's discovery. She sat down heavily in a chair and stared at the wall. What was she supposed to do now? Kate stood and walked to the window. Outside, through the thick glass, she could see the stars. Somewhere out there, 3 other research stations were waiting. Stations that might have survivors. People in cryopods like the one that saved her life. People who would die when the bombs fell. She pulled up the sector map on her computer. Research Station Epsilon was the closest, 8 million kilometers away. Station Gamma was farther, 12 million kilometers. Station Beta was the farthest at 15 million kilometers. In a proper ship, those distances would be nothing. But Delta Prime's main ships were destroyed in the outbreak. Kate checked the remaining vehicles. There was one maintenance pod still functional. Pod Alpha 7. It was designed for short repair missions, not interstellar travel. Maximum range was 2 million kilometers. Life support for 48 hours. No weapons. Minimal shielding. It was completely inadequate for what she was thinking, but it was all she had. Kate ran calculations on her computer. If she used gravitational slingshots around the nearby moon and the sector's small red dwarf star, she could extend the pod's range. If she stripped out everything non-essential to reduce weight, she could go faster. If she pushed the engines past their safety limits, she might reach all 3 stations. It was insane. The pod would probably break apart. The radiation from the red dwarf would damage her equipment. She would have no backup systems if something failed. And even if everything went perfectly, she would have less than 6 hours at each station to deploy the frequency and save any survivors. Kate looked at the clock. 46 hours until bombardment. She could stay here on Delta Prime, safe and alive, waiting for the end. Or she could try to save people she did not even know existed. People who might already be dead. It was not a logical choice. But Kate had learned long ago that humans did not always choose the logical path. She started packing equipment. The frequency generator was small enough to be portable. Kate built 3 duplicate units, 1 for each station. She packed tools, spare power cells, emergency oxygen, and a radiation suit. She took a portable medical kit and what food and water she could carry. Everything else stayed behind. Kate went to the docking bay where Pod Alpha 7 waited. The small craft looked even more fragile than she remembered. It was basically a metal tube with engines and a cockpit. She spent 2 hours stripping out the passenger seats, storage compartments, and safety systems. Every kilogram mattered. She loaded her equipment and climbed into the pilot seat. The pod's computer protested when she entered her flight plan. The route exceeded safe parameters by a significant margin. Kate overrode the warnings and started the launch sequence. There was no time for safety. Before she launched, Kate sent one final message to Zixthor. I am leaving Delta Prime to reach the other stations. I have the frequency generators ready to deploy. If I succeed, the entire sector can be saved. If I fail, at least tell people that I tried. Tell them that one human thought their lives were worth risking everything for. The pod detached from Delta Prime with a metallic clang. Kate fired the engines and felt herself pressed back into the seat. The pod accelerated quickly, faster than it was designed to go. She aimed for the moon first, using its gravity to slingshot toward the red dwarf star. The journey was brutal. The pod shook constantly. Alarms beeped warnings about engine temperature, hull stress, and radiation levels. Kate ignored them all. She had one goal and nothing else mattered. The gravitational maneuvers worked, throwing her toward Station Epsilon at incredible speed. She reached Epsilon after 8 hours. The station looked dead from the outside. No lights, no power signatures, but Kate's sensors detected faint life signs deep inside. Someone was alive. She maneuvered the pod to the docking port and connected. The seal held barely. Kate grabbed a frequency generator and entered the station. The interior was worse than Delta Prime had been. The Vorax had consumed entire sections, but she found what she was looking for in the emergency shelter. 4 cryopods, all active. Inside were survivors. Kate set up the frequency generator in the central corridor and activated it. The familiar sound of her voice mixed with the high-pitched tone filled the station. She watched as the Vorax began to dissolve, turning to gray powder. Within 2 hours, the main sections were clear enough to be safe. She returned to the shelter and opened the cryopods. The first person to wake up was a young woman with red hair. Her name was Claire Murphy, a botanist. The second was Claire's daughter, a 7-year-old girl named Sophie. The others were researchers and technicians, all confused and frightened. Kate explained the situation quickly. The Vorax was neutralized on this station, but the Council was going to bomb the entire sector in less than 36 hours. The survivors needed to get to the escape pods and launch toward the Council fleet, waiting at the sector boundary. Claire took charge of the others. Despite being weak from cryosleep, she helped them to the escape pods and programmed the autopilot coordinates. Before climbing into her own pod, she grabbed Kate's hand. "Thank you for coming back for us. We would have died without you." Kate squeezed her hand once. "Just get your daughter to safety. That is thanks enough." She watched as the escape pods launched and disappeared into the darkness. Then she returned to Pod Alpha 7. 2 stations left. 32 hours remaining. The journey to Station Gamma was even harder. The pod was showing signs of serious damage. The hull had stress fractures. The engines were running hot. Kate pushed them anyway. She had to. There were people waiting. Gamma was in worse shape than Epsilon. The Vorax had spread throughout almost the entire station. Kate had to deploy the frequency generator at maximum power to make any progress. The sustained high output burned out the unit permanently. She would not be able to use it again. But it worked. The Vorax died. She found 6 survivors in a sealed engineering bay. One of them was an old engineer named Frank Butler, who had barricaded himself in with 5 others. He refused to leave until Kate helped him download his research data onto portable drives. She wanted to argue that there was no time, but she saw the desperation in his eyes. This research was his life's work. Kate helped him save the data, then got everyone to the escape pods. Frank was the last to leave. Before he climbed into his pod, he handed Kate one of the data drives. "My work on sustainable fusion. If you make it out of here, give this to someone who can use it. Make my research mean something." Kate took the drive and nodded. She watched the pods launch, then returned to Alpha 7. The pod was barely holding together now. Atmosphere was leaking. The engines were making sounds that no engines should make. But she had one station left. She had to try. Station Beta was the farthest and the largest. As Kate approached, her sensors detected something alarming. The station's reactor was in meltdown. The countdown showed 30 minutes until critical failure. If the reactor exploded, it would ignite the nebula gas surrounding the sector. The explosion would destroy 17 inhabited systems. Billions would die. Kate could see escape pods near the station. Someone had already gotten the survivors out. She could turn around right now and leave, save herself. But the reactor was still counting down. Someone had to stop it. She docked with the station and ran toward the reactor control room. The corridors were filled with Vorax, but she did not stop to deploy the frequency generator. There was no time. Kate just ran, her environmental suit protecting her from the infection. The reactor room was a nightmare. The core was glowing bright red, pulsing with dangerous energy. Kate pulled up the control interface and started the emergency shutdown sequence. But it was not working. The system was too damaged. She would have to do it manually. That meant entering the reactor chamber itself. Kate looked at the radiation readings. They were lethal. Her suit would protect her for maybe 5 minutes. After that, she would absorb enough radiation to kill her, even if she survived the immediate exposure. Kate thought about Claire and Sophie, about Frank and his research, about all the people she had saved and all the billions who would die if this reactor exploded. She thought about her father and what he had taught her. Humans do not wait for rescue. They save themselves. And sometimes they save others too. She opened the reactor chamber door and went inside. The heat was incredible even through her suit. Kate worked quickly, manually releasing the containment rods and flooding the chamber with coolant. The reactor temperature began to drop. The countdown slowed, then stopped. Kate stumbled out of the chamber and collapsed. Her suit's radiation sensor was screaming. She had absorbed far more than any human could survive. Her vision was already blurring. Her hands were shaking uncontrollably. She crawled to the communication station and sent one final message to Zix Thor. I stopped the reactor. Beta is safe. All 3 stations are clean. 22 people saved. 17 systems protected. The frequency works. Use it, save the sector, and tell the Council that humans never give up. We fight until the last breath. Every single time, Kate closed her eyes. She had done everything she could. If she died now, at least she died knowing she had made a difference. She had proven what one person could do when they refused to accept defeat. The darkness closed in around her and she let it come. Zix Thor sat in the Council monitoring station, staring at the message from Kate Morrison. His hands were trembling. He had been following her journey since she first contacted him from Delta Prime. He had watched her succeed when everyone said it was impossible. And now she was dying alone on Station Beta because the Council refused to listen. He had to do something. Zix Thor was just a junior analyst, nobody important, but he could not let this human die without trying to help. He sent an emergency priority message directly to High Arbiter Thexel 7. It was against protocol. He would probably lose his job. But some things were more important than rules. The High Arbiter's response came quickly. Zix Thor was ordered to appear before the Council immediately. He traveled to the Council chambers expecting to be dismissed or punished. Instead, he found himself standing before all 12 member species, explaining everything that Kate Morrison had accomplished. The Council watched Kate's video logs. They reviewed her technical data. They examined the evidence from all 3 stations. The chamber was silent when the final video ended. Kate's voice had been weak when she recorded that last message, but her determination had been clear. High Arbiter Thexel 7 stood and addressed the Council. This human has done what we believed impossible. She survived alone against a threat that killed thousands. She found a solution we did not think existed. She saved lives we had already written off as lost. And she sacrificed herself to protect billions of beings she will never meet. A SCIFI representative spoke next. Her aquatic voice was translated by the chamber computers. Commander Morrison saved my people. 12 SCIFI were stationed on Epsilon. They would be dead without her actions. My government demands we honor this debt. A crystalline Morphean chimed in, his body resonating with sound. The reactor on Beta would have destroyed our colonies. 17 systems saved. 4.7 billion Morphean lives preserved. We cannot ignore such a gift. One by one, the Council members spoke. Each acknowledged what Kate had done. Each questioned the decision to proceed with the bombardment. Finally, High Arbiter Thexel 7 made a choice that surprised everyone, including himself. He ordered the bombardment fleet to stand down. Then he dispatched a medical frigate to Station Beta with orders to retrieve Kate Morrison at maximum speed. The medical team found Kate unconscious in the reactor control room. Her radiation exposure was far beyond what most species could survive. But the Velcrone physicians had technology that could repair cellular damage at the molecular level. They began treatment immediately, working around the clock to save her life. Kate woke up 3 weeks later in a medical facility she did not recognize. Everything was white and clean. Machines beeped softly around her bed. Her body felt strange, like it belonged to someone else. A Velcrone doctor approached when he saw her eyes open. Welcome back, Commander Morrison. You have been unconscious for 21 days. Your injuries were severe, but you are recovering well. You will need physical therapy, but you will make a full recovery. Kate tried to speak, but her throat was too dry. The doctor gave her water. After she drank, she managed to ask the question that mattered. The stations? The survivors? Did the council bomb the sector? The doctor's expression softened, which was unusual for a Velcrone. The bombardment was cancelled. All 3 stations were cleared using your frequency method. The 22 people you saved are alive and well. The sector is secure. You did it, Commander. You saved everyone. Kate closed her eyes and felt tears running down her face. She had not failed. Claire and Sophie were safe. Frank's research would continue. The station survived. All the pain and fear and desperate choices had been worth it. Over the next 2 months, Kate slowly regained her strength. The medical facility became a strange kind of home. Sixthor visited her every day, bringing news from across the galaxy. Kate's story had spread like wildfire. Every species was talking about the human who saved the sector alone. Claire Murphy sent messages with pictures of Sophie drawing pictures of Kate as a superhero. Frank Butler wrote to say that his fusion research was being implemented in 6 systems, and the technology would power millions of homes. The other survivors sent their thanks and their stories of what they were doing with their second chance at life. But the most surprising news came from the Council itself. High Arbiter Thexel 7 announced that humanity's application for Council membership was being reconsidered. The process that normally took decades would be expedited. More importantly, the Council was publicly acknowledging that they had been wrong about humans. When Kate was finally healthy enough to leave the medical facility, the Council held a special ceremony. She was taken to the Grand Chamber, a massive room where the 12 species gathered for historic occasions. Kate had never seen anything so beautiful. The ceiling was made of crystalline panels that showed the stars. The walls displayed images from 1,000 worlds. High Arbiter Thexel 7 stood at the center of the chamber. Kate walked toward him, still weak but determined to stand on her own. The chamber was filled with representatives from every council species. They all stood as she approached. The High Arbiter spoke in Galactic Common, his voice amplified so everyone could hear. Commander Kate Morrison, for 3,000 years the Galactic Council has maintained peace and prosperity across known space. In all that time, we have awarded the Star of Unity only 17 times. Today, we award it for the 18th time, and for the first time to a member of a non-council species. He placed a small medal on Kate's uniform. It was made of a metal she did not recognize, shaped like a star with 12 points. Your actions showed us what we had forgotten, that courage and determination are not limited by species. That one individual can change the fate of billions. That sometimes the right choice is not the logical choice, but the moral one. The High Arbiter paused and looked directly at Kate. I must also apologize. The Council failed you and your people. We made decisions based on fear rather than hope. We wrote you off when we should have been helping you. You proved us wrong, and for that I am grateful. Kate was asked to speak. She stood before the Council, before representatives of species far older and more advanced than humanity. For a moment she did not know what to say. Then she thought about her crew on Delta Prime, about her father who taught her to never give up, about all the humans who explored the stars despite the dangers. I did not do what I did to prove anything to the Council. I did it because people needed help and I was there. That is what humans do. We adapt, we improvise, we endure. We never abandon hope even when logic says there is none. We are not perfect. We make mistakes, but we never stop trying to do better. She looked around the chamber at all the different species. Humanity does not want to join the Council to be judged. We want to join to contribute, to share what we know, to learn from you, to stand beside you when darkness comes, because that is what allies do. They stand together. The chamber was silent when Kate finished. Then slowly the representatives began to show approval in their various ways. The Scythery created waves of water. The Morphians resonated with beautiful tones. The Velcrone tapped their feet in their traditional gesture of respect. It was overwhelming. High Arbiter Thexel 7 called for a vote on humanity's council membership. Kate stood to the side and watched as each species representative cast their decision. She expected it to be close. Some species would still have doubts, but as the votes were counted, she realized something amazing was happening. The vote was unanimous. All 12 species voted to accept humanity as full members of the Galactic Council, not as junior partners, not on probation, but as equals. Kate felt her knees go weak. She had done it. One human engineer had opened the door for her entire species to join the galaxy as equals. The ceremony ended with a celebration that lasted 3 days. Kate met representatives from species she had only read about. She danced with Cytheri in their water gardens. She listened to Morphean crystal songs. She learned jokes from the Velcrone, who had a surprisingly dry sense of humor. But the moment Kate treasured most was when Claire and Sophie arrived. The little girl ran to Kate and hugged her tightly. She was holding a drawing she had made. It showed Kate standing in front of the 3 stations with stars all around. At the bottom, in careful letters, Sophie had written, "The lady who saved everyone." Kate knelt down and looked at the drawing. "This is beautiful, Sophie. I will keep it forever. Thank you for making me look so brave." Sophie smiled. "You are brave. Mama says you are the bravest person in the whole galaxy. She says I should be like you when I grow up." Kate felt her throat tighten with emotion. She looked up at Claire, who was crying happy tears. "Be yourself, Sophie. That is all anyone needs to be. But if you want to be brave, remember this. Brave does not mean you are not scared. Brave means you do what needs to be done even when you are terrified." That night, Kate stood on a balcony looking out at the stars. Zixthor joined her, bringing 2 cups of a warm drink from his homeworld. They stood in comfortable silence for a while. Then Zixthor spoke. "The galaxy will remember what you did, Kate Morrison. Songs will be written about you. Children will learn your name in their history lessons. You changed everything." Kate shook her head. "I was just one person doing what needed to." 5 years passed like water flowing through a river. The galaxy changed in ways that nobody could have predicted, and at the center of many of those changes was Kate Morrison. She became humanity's first official ambassador to the Galactic Council. It was not a job she had wanted or expected. Kate was an engineer, not a politician. But the Council insisted. They said her voice carried weight that no other human could match. So she accepted the position and did her best to represent her species with honor. The work was challenging. Kate had to negotiate treaties, resolve disputes, and help integrate human technology with Council systems. Some days were filled with boring meetings about trade regulations and shipping routes. Other days brought exciting opportunities to work on joint research projects or explore new scientific discoveries. Research Station Delta. Prime was rebuilt as a joint facility operated by both humans and Council species. The new station was 3 times larger than the original and housed scientists from 8 different species. They studied dangerous xenobiological threats, working to prevent another outbreak like the Vorax. Kate visited the station whenever she could, walking through corridors that once ran with black infection and now shone with clean white light. The frequency method Kate discovered became known across the galaxy as the Morrison Protocol. It was now the standard response to bioweapon outbreaks. The Galactic Council trained special teams to deploy the protocol quickly whenever a biological threat emerged. In the 5 years since Kate's discovery, the Morrison Protocol had been used successfully 12 times, saving hundreds of thousands of lives. Each time Kate heard about another successful deployment, she felt a quiet pride. Her solution was helping people across the galaxy. The hours she spent in that laboratory on Delta Prime, desperately searching for an answer, had produced something that would save lives for generations to come. The 22 people Kate saved went on to live remarkable lives. Claire Murphy became a leading expert in xenobotany. Her research on how plants from different worlds could be hybridized led to new food sources for colony worlds. She often spoke publicly about her time on Station Epsilon and the moment Kate Morrison arrived to save them. Sophie Murphy grew into a bright teenager with a passion for xenobiology. She attended the best schools, always carrying that drawing she had made of Kate 5 years ago. When reporters asked her about her career choice, Sophie would smile and say that she wanted to help people the way Kate Morrison helped her family. She wanted to understand alien life and find ways to protect everyone from dangers they did not yet know existed. Frank Butler's fusion research revolutionized power generation across multiple systems. His sustainable fusion reactors were cleaner, safer, and more efficient than anything previously developed. 6 Council systems converted their entire power infrastructure to Butler fusion technology. The old engineer split his time between teaching at universities and working as a consultant on new reactor designs. He never forgot to mention that he owed his life to a human engineer who refused to leave him behind. The other survivors each found their own paths. Some returned to research. Others became teachers or engineers. A few joined the Council's emergency response teams, wanting to help others the way they had been helped. But all of them carried Kate's story with them. They made sure people knew about the woman who came alone into the darkness to save them. Zixthor advanced rapidly through the Council ranks. His decision to bring Kate's story to the High Arbiter had been seen as either brave or foolish at the time. Now it was recognized as one of the most important moments in recent Council history. Zixthor became the head of the Human Integration Office, working closely with Kate to help humanity find its place in the larger galactic community. They remained close friends. Kate would often joke that she never would have survived without his help. Zixthor would always reply that she was the one who did all the real work. Their friendship became symbolic of the growing partnership between humans and the Council species. Where there had once been suspicion and distance, now there was cooperation and mutual respect. High Arbiter Thexel 7 became one of humanity's strongest advocates on the Council. The Velcrone leader who had once ordered the bombardment of the sector now worked tirelessly to ensure humans were treated as full equals. He often spoke about how Kate Morrison taught him that wisdom sometimes came from unexpected places, that the newest voice in the room might have the most important thing to say. Humanity's integration into the Council brought changes to both sides. Humans learned from the advanced technologies and ancient wisdom of the Council species. The Council species learned from human adaptability and determination. New hybrid technologies emerged, combining the best of multiple approaches. New philosophies developed, blending different cultural perspectives into something richer than any single species could create alone. But perhaps the greatest change was in how species viewed each other. Before Kate Morrison, the Council had been set in its ways. They believed they knew which species were worthy and which were not. They thought they could judge a species based on their history and technology level. Kate proved them wrong. She showed that heroism, intelligence, and moral courage could come from anywhere. Young beings across the galaxy learned about Kate Morrison in their schools. The story was told differently by each species, but the core remained the same. A human engineer alone on a dying station refused to give up. She found a solution when others saw only doom. She saved lives at great personal cost. She changed the fate of billions through sheer determination. Children on Earth learned the story with pride. Here was proof that humanity belonged among the stars, that their species had something unique to contribute, that one person's courage could change history. Teachers would end the lesson by reminding students that Kate Morrison was not superhuman. She was just human, and that meant any of them could be brave when the moment required it. On Council worlds, the story took on different meanings. Velcrone children learned about the importance of questioning authority when it was wrong. Cytheri young learned about the value of allies from unexpected places. Morphean crystallings learned how determination could overcome impossible odds. Each species found their own lessons in Kate's journey. Kate herself remained humble about her fame. She attended ceremonies and gave speeches when required, but she preferred to focus on her work. She helped design new safety protocols for research stations. She advised on first contact procedures with newly discovered species. She worked on projects to make space travel safer for everyone. On the 5th anniversary of the day she activated the frequency on Delta Prime, the Council held a special commemoration. Representatives from all member species gathered to celebrate what was now called Unity Day. It marked not just Kate's achievement, but the beginning of a new era of cooperation in the galaxy. Kate stood before the assembled crowd and gave a short speech. She talked about the crew she lost on Delta Prime and how their work contributed to her success. She mentioned Alan Cooper by name, making sure everyone knew that his research was the foundation of the Morrison Protocol. She thanked Zixthor for believing in her when it mattered most. She acknowledged the Council for having the courage to change their minds. But mostly she talked about hope. About how hope was the most powerful force in the universe. Hope was what made her keep searching for a solution when logic said there was none. Hope was what pushed her to reach those other stations when staying safe would have been easier. Hope was what let her believe that one person could make a difference. And hope is what I want to leave with all of you. When you face impossible situations, when everything seems lost, remember that hope is a choice. You can choose to give up, or you can choose to keep fighting. You can choose to accept defeat, or you can choose to look for another way. That choice is what defines us. Not our species or our technology or our history, but the choice we make when everything is on the line. The crowd listened in silence. Then they showed their approval in their various ways. filling the chamber with sound and light and movement. Kate stepped back from the podium and found herself surrounded by well-wishers. But she looked past them to where Sophie Murphy stood with her mother. The teenager caught Kate's eye and smiled, holding up a new drawing she had made. This one showed the entire galaxy, with 12 different species standing together under the stars. That night, Kate stood alone on the observation deck of the council station, looking out at the stars. Somewhere out there was the sector where everything had happened. Delta Prime, Epsilon, Gamma, Beta. 4 stations that had been hell 5 years ago and were now thriving research facilities. The Vorax was gone, destroyed by a frequency modulated by human voice, by her voice. Kate thought about the journey that had brought her here. The fear, the pain, the desperate scramble to survive. The choice to help others when helping herself would have been easier. She thought about her father and the lessons he taught her. About being human and what that really meant. Humans were not the strongest species. They were not the smartest or the most advanced. But they had something that made them special. They had the ability to hope when hope seemed foolish. To fight when fighting seemed pointless. To care about others, Eva.